Hi everyone, my name is Sumaya Ahmed and I am the Virtual Content Specialist for 7th grade science. In this video, I will share some strategies on how to facilitate critical thinking with students using an evidence gradient activity. First, I want to start off by giving a brief overview on critical thinking and why it's so important to practice critical thinking skills in class. So this image here is from an article from lumenlearning.com about critical thinking and evaluating information. I want to start with this image to help teachers and students frame the idea of critical thinking and how to know you are critically thinking. As you can see from this table, critical thinking is skepticism, examining assumptions, challenging reasoning, and uncovering biases. These are all complex thinking strategies which require us to think metacognitively. I also want to refer to this screenshot from this YouTube video on critical thinking. The link is here, and I'll also include it in the description box, where they clarify more about how critical thinking works. And the video discusses some characteristics of critical thinking, such as analyzing information, conceptualizing and reasoning information, which all lead to assessing information more comprehensively and in a more disciplined way. So now, how does this information about critical thinking translate to an in-person or remote classroom with 10 to 13-year-old middle school students? So one takeaway would be to encourage questioning and thinking autonomously. As teachers and students, we are very comfortable with the idea of the teacher giving knowledge or the right answer and the students passively taking in this information. When we encourage students to challenge and question things presented to them, they take a more active role in their learning. It is also important to note that we should develop this practice in students by clarifying that there is no right or wrong answer while critically thinking. I like to tell my students that there is no right or wrong answer, and I just want to hear your thought process, your justification, your reasoning about what we are learning. So one way to promote critical thinking in science class is by using an evidence gradient. So I started using this strategy when my school adapted the Amplify curriculum. And as the name suggests, it is a gradient with an arrow going up and going down on one side. The top part is darker in color. The middle part is medium gray, and the bottom is very light gray. And the top part shows that since it's darker, the most convincing evidence should go here, and the least convincing evidence should go down here. And this evidence refers to an evidence to a claim. So the colors and arrows are helpful here because it helps visual learners organize their thoughts using these visual cues. This promotes critical thinking because they will be examining evidence, conceptualizing the information, and making connections to the science concepts. They're going to be questioning and reasoning on the strength of the evidence in reference to a claim that they will be given. So we should clarify to students that, again, there is no right answer for this. If you ask them, why do you think this evidence is most convincing, they should be able to explain their reasoning with their own thought process, which it should involve deeper thinking on the concepts in question. So each student, if they're working as a group, then they may have similar answers since they will be discussing the evidence. However, different groups may have different answers based on what they believe would be most convincing evidence and the least convincing evidence. So here I have a screenshot of one lesson I did with my students when we were in person using the metabolism unit from the Amplify curriculum. And since we were in person, I cut out these evidence cards and I asked students to glue them onto this evidence gradient. But if we're remote, you can use any other platform such as Google Jamboard or Google Slides. and they can move these cards to the evidence gradient. So here we have the evidence gradient on one side, and usually there is a claim on top, and all the evidence is related to that claim. So here we have the evidence cards, which provide several different types of evidence. Some are observations, some are science concepts, such as this one with the hemoglobin carrying oxygen to the red blood cells, and some are tables of the test results for the person in the case study. So students were asked to sort their evidence on a gradient into strong, medium, and weak evidence in reference to a claim. So I want to highlight that it's good to encourage students to put some evidence in the middle, because this can spark a discussion with their peers where they can possibly move those middle cards into strong or weak evidence based on their discussions, and if they modified or learned something new. I applied the evidence gradient strategy to align with the lesson on evaluating a solution to a problem as well. So again, this gradient can be used for a lot of different types of activities. For instance, in this case, our problem can include deforestation of vulnerable habitats to build infrastructure. So you can have a problem for a project where they can research and suggest solutions. And you can compile the suggested student solutions, and either as a whole class or a group, you can evaluate the strength and weakness of the solution in reference to the problem. And then you can organize them on this evidence gradient. So as students are going through this thought process on the strength of the solutions, they will be using those critical thinking skills, such as examining the solution ideas, asking questions about them, using the science concepts they learned, and reasoning skills to evaluate these solutions. To summarize, we can facilitate critical thinking in students by using an evidence gradient. This gradient will prompt students to analyze and evaluate information using strategies such as questioning, synthesizing, and reasoning of information in an organized way. And it can spark a helpful class discussion based on the differences on student responses on their evidence gradient. Thank you for watching.